The starter characters are not what they look like, and this video will address the most important things you need to know about them. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Ragnarok Labyrinth, a new time-effective RPG that's based on the popular, massive online game beloved by millions of fans. Travel to adventure fields by yourself or together with friends and explore the mysterious labyrinth dungeons. In there, you'll encounter cute but also scary monsters from various stages, and there's also raid bosses that you can conquer with many other players. And in order to win these battles, you'll get to raise your hero by choosing one of the classic jobs, like magician or swordsman. There's also various PvP modes like brawls, duels, and even a league system that allows players to compete against each other. And for a limited time only, if you download now, you can redeem a unique reward package by using the code LabyrinthG. So if you want to support this channel and get free rewards, make sure to click on the download link in the description. One of the biggest things nobody seems to be talking about is the fact that the starter characters of Genshin Impact don't actually live up to their name, and instead, they're probably one of the most premium choices to go after if you're intending to build your team with them. And it's truly surprising to see that MiHoYo so far has never included Kaeya, Amber, or Lisa in any of the event banners, because the majority of the player base do not go after the standard wish pool, since you're essentially casting a wide net and hoping to catch something that you're probably not going to be happy with, especially as more time keeps passing and more 4-star and 5-star characters we continue to keep acquiring from the featured banners. And the only time we actually had a guaranteed chance to acquire them was from Paimon's bargains with Star Glitter, but even then, we haven't seen them show up even once again after Kaeya himself was in the shop during December. Either way, the main idea is that for those who have started out at somewhere from 1.1 update, chances are at least few 4-star characters should have their 3 to 6 constellations unlocked, and the more you keep playing, the less sense it makes when you call Kaeya, Amber, or Lisa the free-to-play characters, since you're never going to be wishing for them if you only go after event character or weapon banners. And obviously, you could say that constellations aren't that big of a deal when it comes to Genshin's endgame, since more emphasis is placed on artifacts. However, it just so happens that a lot of power, especially for some of these characters, is actually locked behind constellations. So just how important are the constellations for these so-called starter characters, and what exactly could you be missing out on? Well, for example, Amber's playstyle is completely different if you have her second constellation unlocked, because without it, you cannot manually trigger her Baron Bunny, which can be an annoying thing, because even if you grab the enemy's aggro, you still want the explosion to go off as soon as possible because of the battlefield positioning and other things like setting up a fast melt combo. And then things get even more ridiculous because her fourth constellation actually gives her a second charge to throw the bunny around, and even better, its cooldown straight up gets reduced by 20%, which basically goes down from 15 to 12 seconds. And to add more salt to the wound, her first constellation is actually just fluff before the serious stuff gets unlocked, so even when we first saw her show up during the first month Genshin went live, most of us thought that she will just show up in one of the banners, and saving up Star Glitter was a bigger priority. The irony, of course, is that she never did reveal her bunny-eared head anymore, and even having the first constellation unlocked now would be a nice thing to have, especially because of the stimulus package of acquaint fates we got from leveling our characters. Now there's a slightly similar, although not as dramatic situation with Lisa, since she actually does perform decently without any constellations as an electro damage dealer, and you will find great footage of her destroying her enemies, but even then, it's surprising to see that she basically loses out on having resistance to interruption if she's not on her second constellation, which actually is very annoying to pull off when you have small or big enemies trying to crush you, and she takes more than a second to unload her combo attack. But the next thing that actually transforms how you can play her is the final constellation, which basically no longer requires for you to build up the 3 stacks of conductive statuses on your enemies, which needs to be done with her elemental skill, and instead, all you gotta do is just swap her near any group of enemies, and they all get tagged with max amount of stacks immediately. And combining this together with her second constellation, she suddenly turns into a fast support damage dealer that lets you unleash her strongest form of the elemental skill, which is no joking matter, because even as low as level 1, the talent already has a massive 487% multiplier, which isn't something you even see on the strongest character burst attacks. Finally, we have the man with the secret eye, and unlike Lisa or Amber, while he does get awesome benefits from constellations, they don't exactly feel as massive or transformative, and instead act as a nice buffer to his damage output. And even just by getting his first constellation, you already get a semi-consistent buff of 15% critical rate as long as he attacks enemies affected by cryo, which shouldn't be that big of a deal since his burst and skill have low cooldown and setup time. So in essence, while the majority of us won't get to have fun with their constellations, it's a good idea to keep in mind just how important these leaps in power can be, and because we keep on getting new banners that start reintroducing some of the 4-star characters that have already been featured, we don't actually ever get a chance of obtaining these constellations. And if MiHoYo doesn't let us unlock more powerful and game-changing versions of these so-called starter characters, then the players will just keep on playing and unlocking other character constellations, which most likely will motivate them to play something that has more constellations. Still, to check how important this statement is, we need to take a closer look at our favorite free-to-play trio of characters. If there's someone that knows how to stay true to being labeled as a starter or free-to-play character, then it would be Kaeya. He has truly been killing it lately with the amount of love the community has started showing to him, and it's for a good reason too. First of all, we've got the classic setup of being cryo, which means you're free to choose between melt, freeze, or even superconduct team play styles, thanks to his own competent damage and fast normal attacks. And the way he synergizes so well together with guys like Xingqiu or Chongyun is not even funny, especially if you put all three together into one team, and then put a Geo or Anemo character as a cherry on top to boost up your damage with either of the support artifacts. Ironically, he is also great for exploration because of being tall, so you have an easier time catching those annoying fireflies or climbing mountains. Not to mention, he was the one and only solution you would use to cross all the way to the abandoned island before you would realize you could just glide there instead. Either way, he's not going to disappoint you even without any constellations, and because of how flexible his whole design is, you can easily use him either as your main or support damage dealer. There always seems to be the need for balance in life, and Amber, together with Lisa, are no exception to this when it comes to balancing out Kaeya's power. So while the super eye-patch guy is running around freezing, melting, and cutting up everyone, you then have Amber, who either has the choice to go with physical normal attacks or turn to melt charge shots. And these builds are actually both fun to play because she does feel agile and pretty strong, especially if Baron Bunny immediately absorbs enough damage to go off in an explosion, so you can mark enemies with pyro and then set them up for a nice vaporized melt combo, followed by a switch back to her and unloading few more pyro charge shots. But it's also important to note that she is from the best element, which means she has the most utility when it comes to dealing with all sorts of enemy resistances and shields, especially how even after all this time, we still keep seeing so much cryo enemies and conditions show up in the Spiral Abyss. On the other hand, you have Lisa, which has a decent damage output that gets held back by her own element, and even if you would go deep into the elemental mastery just for her, it actually falls off pretty hard in endgame, because when it's used in transformative reactions, we all know it does not take other important stats into account, like critical rate, damage, or even attack, and these are the stats that you actually want to have stacked on your character when you're doing endgame, so finding room for elemental mastery at this point is only viable when using amplifying reactions of melt or vaporize, which is something that Amber is able to take advantage of. Of course, from early to mid-game, the power of elemental mastery with Lisa gives a serious spanking to her enemies. But Lisa and Amber can definitely provide their usefulness, especially if you have powerful artifact sets prepared for them, since they do the most heavy lifting out of all the things considered for your damage output. And even then, who doesn't like to blow up their enemies with Baron Bunny or electrocute someone who's late to return their library books? With all this exciting talk about constellations and strategies, now would probably be a good time to admit there's actually 4 so-called starter characters, and the last one is you, or in this case, the Traveler. And it's actually amazing how the more time you spend with this character, the more you realize the insane utility it brings into some of the challenges, like completing the currently ongoing Peculiar Wonderland by simply using the strategy of meteorites when using the Geo Traveler, and just straight up skipping or completing some of the stages effortlessly. And even then, since you can swap between Geo and Anemo, you can pretty much put on either Viridescent or Archaic Petra artifact sets on the Traveler, and then use your chosen sibling as a support for your team. And let's not forget that we do unlock all 6 constellations just by completing a portion of the main story and buying out the remaining stock in Antiquity Shop, which of course doesn't bring the most amazing improvements, but you couldn't complete those previously mentioned event stages so easily if you didn't have his final constellation increase the duration of the meteorite's presence. So even if the Traveler is part of the 4 starter characters, he can probably fit the true definition of free-to-play character. It's fascinating to see that MiHoYo decided to make the characters you get from the start most exclusive of them all, and even after looking at some of the constellations from the 4 characters, it's safe to say they're still strong in their own ways, some maybe more than others, but one thing that's probably on everyone's mind is the question, when we should start expecting to see Kaeya, Lisa, and Amber actually show up on featured banners. But until this happens, make sure to subscribe by hitting the bell notification on and gently press the like button so you don't miss out on videos like these and help support the channel as well. Thank you for watching us and see you next time.